A song so infectious, it still gets stuck in your head decades later, with that soaring falsetto and synth riff that screams 80s cool. But here's the twist that keeps music nerds up at night. What if I told you Take On Me by Aha wasn't just a lucky strike? It bombed. Twice. Hard. A band pouring their souls into a track only to watch it sink without a ripple in 1984 and again in 1985. Doors slamming, labels shrugging, radio stations yawning. So what flipped the script from total obscurity to a chart-topping monster that defined a generation? Stick around, because this isn't your standard rise to fame yarn. It's packed with gritty Oslo nights, a video gamble that could have wrecked everything, and echoes rippling into today that might just rewrite what you think about overnight success. You won't believe the near misses that made it all hang by a thread.
Flashback to the gritty streets of Oslo in the late 1970s, where two kids barely out of their teens are dreaming bigger than the fjords that frame their city. Paul Wakhtar Savoy, back then just Paul Wakhtar, a quiet guitarist with a knack for melodies that lingered like fog, and Magnafur Holman, his sharp-witted keyboardist buddy from primary school, first crossed paths in a haze of cigarette smoke and rock records. They bonded over bootleg tapes of The Doors, that raw, psychedelic edge pulling them into late-night jams in Magni's basement where the air hummed with the scent of damp concrete and amplifier hum. By 1979, they'd scraped together a band called Bridges, channeling Jim Morrison's brooding intensity into something fiercer, more Norwegian. Think howling winds over electric riffs. They even cut a debut album, Fakotog, on their own dime, pressing vinyl in a tiny Oslo studio that felt more like a bomb shelter than a hit factory. But the dream? It was starving. Gigs in smoke-filled pubs drew handfuls of locals nursing beers, while demo tapes sent to labels vanished into the void, returned with curtain notes saying, "Too derivative, lads, try something poppier." Paul and Magni poured everything into it. Paul's father had passed in a tragic plane crash when he was just 6, leaving a void filled with strings and chords, while Magni sketched lyrics on napkins, his painter's eye seeing songs as canvases waiting for color. Yet Bridges fizzled by 1981, the drummer and bassist drifting to steadier jobs, leaving the duo questioning if Oslo's chill was seeping into their fire. Enter Morten Harket, stage right, like a bolt from a clear sky. 1923, and Morten's already got that voice, a falsetto that could shatter glass or mend hearts, honed in a soul blues outfit called Soldier Blue, where he'd belt out covers of Otis Redding under dim pub lights. He stumbles into Paul and Magni's world at a casual jam in Asker, a sleepy Oslo suburb, invited by a mutual friend who swears these guys have something special. Morten arrives skeptical, guitar slung over his shoulder, but the moment Paul strums the opening chords to a half-formed track they've been wrestling with, everything shifts. That riff, bouncy, insistent, like a heartbeat quickening under street lamps, hooks him instantly. It's called Miss Eerie back then, a quirky nod to some spectral romance Paul scribbled in his notebook years earlier, inspired by a teenage crush that felt more like a ghost story than puppy love. Magni layers in a synth line on his battered keyboard, simple but sticky, evoking the chew of juicy fruit gum from those sunny ads that promised escape in every rapper. Morten leans in, eyes lighting up. That's it, the spark, but let's twist it, make it ours. They huddle for hours, Morten suggesting a soaring chorus that climbs like a ladder to the stars, tweaking Paul's initial idea which echoed too closely the dramatic swells of Richard Strauss's Thus Spake Zarathustra, that epic fanfare from 2001, A Space Odyssey. Instead, Morten nudges it into something lighter, more urgent. Take on me, take me on. Those words tumbling out as if they'd always been waiting. By the end of the night, the room pulses with possibility. Laughter cuts through the tension, beers clink in a makeshift toast. This isn't just a song, it's their manifesto. September 1982 seals it. Paul and Magni, survivors of Bridges' wreckage, invite Morten to join officially, dubbing themselves Aha after a throwaway lyric in Paul's journal that just clicked. Simple, punchy, an exclamation of discovery. No more Doors shadows. They're eyeing the glossy sheen of Duran Duran, those London synth kings ruling the airways with videos that screamed glamour. But breaking out from Oslo, that's the real grind. Norway's scene is cozy but insular. State radio favors folk tunes and jazz, while international scouts rarely ventured north of Copenhagen. The trio pools their savings, a few hundred kroner from odd jobs, Paul's guitar gigs at weddings, Magni's art commissions, Morten's bar shifts. They rent a rehearsal space in a crumbling warehouse by the docks, where seagulls wheel overhead and the harbor's salt tang mixes with sweat-soaked amps. Days blur into nights, crafting demos on a 4-track recorder that hisses like an old radio. Lesson 1 emerges as their flagship, a polished take on that original riff, Morten's vocals weaving vulnerability into every line. Paul's guitar adds subtle stabs that mimic a lover's hesitant touch. They fire off tapes to every label in Europe, from EMI in Stockholm to indie outfits in Hamburg. Each rejection a gut punch. Catchy, but needs polish. Who's your manager? Desperation creeps in. Paul pawns his childhood acoustic for studio time. Magni sketches band logos on walls to stay sane. Rumors swirl in Oslo's underground. These AHA kids are onto something. But will they crack before winter bites? The hustle peaks when they decide to bolt for London, the beating heart of the music world. 1983, and it's a leap of faith, packing battered cases with clothes that smell of fish markets and dreams heavier than lead. They land in a dingy flat share in Swit's cottage, walls paper-thin, surviving on instant noodles and Paul's busking on Oxford Street, where tourists toss coins for renditions of Take On Me that draw curious crowds. Magni lands a gig at a studio with a Space Invaders machine, pure 1980s bliss, run by producer John Ratcliffe, who hears their demo and mutters, "You've got edge, boys. Let's sharpen it." Warner Brothers sniffs around, but it's a slow burn. Endless meetings in glass towers, executives in suits eyeing these Nordic newcomers like exotic pets. Internal doubts fester, too. Morten wonders if his voice translates without subtitles. Paul frets over lyrics that bare his soul a bit too raw. Magni pushes for synth layers that evoke icy fjords melting in the neon. Yet in those lean months, bonds forge unbreakable. Shared smokes on fire escapes, arguments over chord progressions that end in breakthroughs, late-night confessions about lost fathers and unspoken fears. Take On Me evolves here, from a basement sketch to a polished arrow aimed at the charts. Its chorus now a clarion call, pleading, defiant, alive. Little do they know, this spark from Oslo's shadows is about to ignite, or flicker out in the rain-soaked streets of England.
October 1984. London is buzzing with Wham, Duran Duran, and neon everything, and AHA finally have a record deal with Warner Brothers. After months of demo polishing with John Ratcliffe and his engineer Tony Mansfield, the guy behind Naked Eyes is always something there to remind me, they've re-recorded the song as Take On Me. Faster tempo, brighter synths, Morten's falsetto now piercing like a crystal arrow. The label loves it. They slap it on 12-inch vinyl with a moody black and white sleeve of the band staring like they're about to rob a bank, and on October 19th, it drops in the United Kingdom. Crickets. It limps to number 137 on the UK chart before vanishing completely. Radio DJs play it once at 2 in the morning if they're feeling generous. MTV Europe barely existed yet, and the few stations that did air videos, look at the cheap performance clip, just a band in a smoky room with dry ice and blue lighting, and yawn. No story, no hook, no reason to care. Warner's British office panics. They'd spent real money flying the band over, putting them in a decent studio, pressing thousands of singles. One executive reportedly told manager Terry Slater, "It's dead. Cut your losses." Back in their cramped London flat, the mood is funeral quiet. Paul chain smokes on the fire escape, staring at the rain, convinced they've blown their one shot. Magne sketches angry cartoons of record company suits on the walls. Morten, ever the stoic one, just keeps running scales in the bathroom because the acoustics are better. They'd left jobs, families, everything in Norway for this. Now the phone stops ringing, gigs dry up, even the Norwegian press, which had hyped them as the next big export, goes silent. The band gathers in a pub on Portobello Road one freezing November night and has the conversation nobody wants to have. Do we pack it in and go home? Paul slams his pint down and says no. If the song dies, they'll make it rise from the grave themselves. They decide to re-record it again, but this time they want something nobody else has. Something visual that screams louder than radio ever could. Warner is skeptical. They've already lost money once.
The band begs for one more roll of the dice. Against every sensible instinct, the label agrees to fund a second version and, crucially, a proper music video. But with a catch. If this flops too, Aha are done. Dropped. Finished. They head back into the studio in early 1985, hearts pounding, knowing this is literally their last bullet. Tony Mansfield tightens the production even more, the drums snap harder, the synth bass bounces like rubber. Morten pushes his voice into the stratosphere on the final chorus. They rename the original working title, Lesson 1, for Good, and lock in Take On Me as the anthem it was always meant to be. When the master tape is delivered, even the engineers feel it. This version has electricity running through it. But masters don't sell records. Airplay does. Video does. And the clock is ticking louder than ever. Little did they know, the next move would either immortalize them or bury them for good.
March 1985. The remix Take On Me lands in Europe first. Warner rolls it out in Norway, Germany, France, and a handful of smaller markets, hoping the continent will warm to 3 Scandinavian pretty boys with a synth banger. Early signs look promising. Norway instantly embraces it. #1 for weeks, kids screaming the chorus in schoolyards, state radio spinning it non-stop. Germany puts it in rotation. Even France gives it a polite nod. The band hits the road in a creaky tour van, playing half-empty clubs from Hamburg to Lyon, sleeping on fans' floors because the per diems barely cover petrol. Then, the numbers come in. Outside Norway, it stalls hard. Germany peaks at a limp number 30-something, France barely cracks the top 50. The United Kingdom, still stinging from the first flop, refuses to touch it. Warner's American division watches from across the Atlantic and decides it's not worth the gamble yet. The single climbs to number 138 on the Billboard Bubbling Under chart, which is basically the music industry's waiting room for obscurity, and then slides right back out. Inside the band, the cracks start showing. Paul becomes obsessed with every chart position, scribbling numbers on cigarette packs like a madman. Magne quietly tells friends he's thinking of going back to art school if this is it. Morten, the eternal optimist, keeps saying one more push, but even he stops smiling in photos. Their manager, Terry Slater, is on the phone daily, begging Warner for another chance, reminding them the album, Hunting High and Low, is already recorded and sounding incredible. The label's response is cold. Show us a hit single first, or the album stays on the shelf. The pressure cooker moment comes in April. Warner executives fly to London for a crisis meeting. They play the song on the fanciest stereo money can buy. Heads nod, they admit it's catchy, but then comes the hammer. It's 1985. Nobody cares about a song unless there's a video that makes people stop channel surfing. MTV in America is now the kingmaker. No rotation, no career. And the cheap blue-lit performance video they shot for the first release, dead on arrival. The label lays down an ultimatum. Make a video that costs less than $50,000 or they're pulling the plug on everything. The band counters with a wild idea they've been nursing since the first flop, something never done before. A comic book world where a girl gets pulled from reality into a pencil sketch dimension. Director Steve Barron, fresh off Michael Jackson and Madonna clips, hears the pitch and says he can do it, but only one way: rotoscaping every single frame by hand. Translation: it'll take 6 months and blow way past 50 grand. Warner laughs them out of the room. For 48 hours, Aha believes it's over. They start pricing flights back to Oslo. Morten even calls his old band Soldier Blue to see if the door is still open. Then, out of nowhere, a junior Warner exec named Jeff Aroff, who'd later signed Madonna and Prince, sees the test footage Steve Barron secretly shot on spec. 30 seconds of Bunty Bailey reaching through a comic page toward Morten's sketched hand. Aroff slams his fist on the table and says, "This is the future. Fund it or I quit." The label reluctantly agrees to one final gamble. But now, the budget is stretched so thin that if the video doesn't work, the band owes the overages. They sign the papers with shaking hands. 6 months of animation hell begins, while the song sits on life support, and the 3 guys from Oslo wonder if they've just bet their entire future on a cartoon. And that cartoon was about to become the most expensive, stressful, and legendary 4 minutes in 80s music history.
May 1985. A warehouse in Wandsworth, South London, becomes ground zero for one of the most insane projects anyone has ever attempted for a pop song. Steve Barron locks himself and a team of 30 animators inside a space that smells of ink, sweat, and desperation. Their mission: trace over 3,000 individual frames of live-action footage, pencil line by pencil line, to create the world's first full-length rotoscoped music video. The shoot itself is pure chaos. Morten, Paul, and Magne spend 2 solid weeks acting out chase scenes in a bare studio painted chroma key green. Bunty Bailey, 22-year-old British model with 0 acting experience, is flown in to play the girl who pulls Morten out of the comic. Sparks fly immediately. Between takes, Morten and Bunty disappear into corners, whispering, holding hands, stealing kisses when they think no one's looking. By the end of week 1, they're officially a couple, and the tabloids are already sniffing. The chemistry bleeds straight into the footage. When Bunty flips the page and reaches for Morten's sketched hand, it doesn't look like acting. It looks like 2 people falling hard in real time. Meanwhile, the animators are losing their minds. Rotoscoping means projecting each frame onto a glass table and drawing over it by hand, 3,000 times. One guy reportedly starts crying on day 40 because his wrist cramps so badly he can't hold a pencil. The budget explodes past $200,000, then $300,000. Warner executives in Burbank are having daily meltdowns. Every week, a new telex arrives screaming, "Shut it down!" Steve Barron just rips them up and keeps going. To save money, the team works 20-hour days, sleeping on the floor under drawing tables. Someone brings in a black and white television so they can watch the Live Aid rehearsals on the tiny screen while they trace. When Bob Geldof appears asking the world to care, the animators look around at their own starving artist nightmare and laugh bitterly. They nickname the project the money pit that ate AHA. Halfway through, disaster nearly ends it all. A pipe bursts in the warehouse and floods the ground floor. Hundreds of finished cells float in ankle-deep water. The team wades in at 3 in the morning, fishing priceless drawings out of the muck, laying them on every radiator in London to dry. Not one frame is lost, but the insurance company refuses to pay a penny, claiming artistic insanity isn't covered. Morten flies in for reshoots wearing the same leather jacket every day because it's the only one that matches the earlier footage. Bunty shows up with love bites on her neck that the makeup girl has to cover with concealer. Paul and Magne barely speak anymore. They're exhausted, broke, and terrified this lunatic cartoon is going to be the last thing anyone ever sees of them. Then, in late September, the final frame is inked. The edited video is couriered to Los Angeles on a reel that cost more to ship than Los Band's first album. Warner screens it in a tiny viewing room for 20 stone-faced executives. 30 seconds in, someone whispers, "Holy shit." By the time Bunty flips the comic page and the motorcycle gang turns into scribbled villains, half the room is crying. The head of promotion stands up and says 4 words nobody expected. Clear the schedule, everything. They weren't just making a music video. They'd accidentally invented a new visual language, and the world was about to lose its mind over 4 minutes of pencil lines and a love story that started bleeding off the screen into real life. But when MTV finally pressed play, even they had no idea the explosion that was coming.
October 1985. MTV receives the finished tape on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, the video is in heavy rotation, which in 1985 means every 90 minutes, 24 hours a day. Phone lines at the network melt. Viewers call in screaming, "What the hell was that?" and "Play it again!" Kids smash their piggy banks to buy the single because they want to own the magic they just saw. Radio stations that ignored the song for a full year suddenly can't playlist it enough. The chart climb is brutal and beautiful. It enters the Billboard Hot 100 at number 91, then rockets 70, 45, 22, 9, 3, and finally, on October 19th, exactly 1 year after the first flop, Take On Me hits number 1 in America. It stays there for a month. Across the planet, it's the same story. Number 1 in Australia, Germany, Italy, Austria, Switzerland, Belgium, Holland, 36 countries in total. The album, Hunting High and Low, shoots to triple platinum practically overnight. AHA can't walk down any street in Europe without being mobbed.
In Oslo, the Prime Minister congratulates them on television like they just won the Olympics. But the speed of it breaks something inside the band. They're whisked onto private jets before they've even processed what happened. One day they're eating cold beans out of a can in a London squat. The next they're headlining Madison Square Garden with 20,000 Americans screaming every word back at them. Morten's voice starts cracking from the relentless schedule. 3 shows in 3 countries in 24 hours. Paul stops talking to journalists entirely because every interview asks the same dumb question: how does it feel to be overnight sensations? Magni just stares out of plane windows, wondering if any of it is real. The American press slaps the cruelest label on them: one-hit wonders. Take On Me is so huge, it eclipses everything else on the album. Their follow-up single, The Sun Always Shines on TV, goes top 20, but nobody cares. They just want the pencil video again. DJs introduce a-ha as the Take On Me guys for the next 30 years. Inside the band, it stings worse than any flop ever did. And then there's Bunty and Morten, the tabloids' feast. Front pages scream, comic book romance comes true, with paparazzi shots of them holding hands at Heathrow. For a while, it's fairy tale fuel. The video literally predicted their love story. But the road is poison for relationships. By Christmas 1986, the fights start. Missed calls, jealous accusations, Bunty alone in London while Morten's in Tokyo or Toronto. The breakup is messy and public. And suddenly the video everyone loves feels like a 4-minute home movie of a relationship that no longer exists. Warner smells blood and pushes harder. More tours, more videos, more pressure to recreate the lightning. The band agrees to everything because they're terrified it will vanish as fast as it arrived. They don't sleep for 2 years straight. They make millions, yes, but they also make enemies of their own bodies and each other. By 1987, the cracks are canyon-sized, and the song that saved them starts to feel like the anchor dragging them under. Yet the darkest part wasn't the fame or the breakups. It was what fame quietly did to the 3 kids from Oslo who once believed all they needed was one hit to fix everything. Turns out one hit can break you in ways 2 flops never could.
1987. The world still thinks a-ha is living the dream, but behind the private jets and sold-out arenas, the wheels are coming off. They've just released their second album, Scoundrel Days, darker, moodier, a deliberate middle finger to anyone expecting another bubblegum hit. Critics love it, fans buy it, but it never touches the insane heights of the debut, and Warner starts whispering that familiar word: disappointment. The touring schedule turns inhuman. 250 shows in 18 months, sometimes 2 cities in one night. Morten's voice gives out so often, the doctors travel with them carrying cortisone shots. Paul develops stomach ulcers from stress and chain smoking. Magnus starts having panic attacks backstage, hiding in equipment cases until the adrenaline subsides. The crew nicknamed them the Walking Dead because nobody sleeps more than 3 hours at a stretch. Money is pouring in, but it's not going where people think. Royalties get split 3 ways after management, label, and publishing take their cuts. By the time the taxman in Norway, one of the highest rates on earth, is done, the guys see maybe 15% of what fans assume they're banking. They buy nice apartments in Oslo and London, sure, but most of the cash disappears into tour buses, video budgets, and keeping an army of staff paid. Paul jokes bitterly that they're millionaires on paper, broke in real life. Then the old resentment surface. Paul wrote Take On Me almost single-handedly back in the Bridges days, yet the credits listed as Wakhtar, Furaholm, Harket. Fine when nobody's earning anything. Brutal when the song is suddenly worth tens of millions in syncs and royalties. Quiet conversations start happening without Morten present. Lawyers get involved. Nothing explodes in public yet, but the trust starts rotting from the inside. Morten's relationship with Bunty collapses completely in 1988. She gives one devastating interview saying the video ruined them, that every time someone played it, it reminded her of what they lost. Morten stops watching the clip entirely. For years afterward, if it comes on in a bar, he walks out. By 1989, they're burned-out shells. The third album, Stay on These Roads, still sells platinum, but the joy is gone. During recording sessions in Los Angeles, Paul and Magnet refused to be in the same room as each other for days at a time. Morten flies to Norway just to breathe without someone asking for an autograph. They finish the record out of pure stubbornness, then announce a hiatus that everyone knows is code for "we might never speak again." In private, each member hits their own wall. Magnet checks into a clinic for exhaustion. Paul disappears to New York and doesn't tell the others where he's staying. Morten throws himself into environmental activism because saving the planet feels easier than saving the band. The world moves on. Grunge is coming. Synth pop is suddenly embarrassing. Take on Me becomes the punchline in American movies, that cheesy 80s relic. Radio stops playing their new stuff entirely. In the United States especially, they're frozen forever as that one video, those 3 hairstyles, that falsetto note. For a decade, the song that rescued them becomes the cage they can't escape. Every reunion offer comes with the same condition. You'll open with Take On Me, and you'll smile like it's 1985. Every time they agree, a little piece of them dies. And the worst part? The money never stops. Commercials, movies, wedding DJs, TikTok. Every year, another million drops into the account, whether they want it to or not. It's blood money from a song they can't play without remembering the price. But even blood money keeps a story alive, and by the time 2025 rolls around, the song that almost ended them is about to face its final, most heartbreaking chapter.
June 2025. 40 years after the pencil sketch miracle, Morten Harket sits alone in an Oslo television studio and says the words nobody ever wanted to hear. I have Parkinson's. It's progressed faster than anyone expected. There will probably come a day, sooner than I'd like, when I can no longer sing Take On Me the way it deserves to be sung. The interview airs on a Friday night. By Saturday morning, the clip has 200 million views worldwide. Fans flood social media with tears and old concert footage, turning the chorus into a global vigil. For the first time in decades, a-ha trends for something other than nostalgia. Behind the scenes, the news detonates a bomb that has been ticking for years. Paul and Magnet release separate statements within hours. Polite, supportive, but carefully worded. Norwegian newspapers immediately notice the difference in tone. Tabloids dig up 20-year-old quotes about royalty splits and start connecting dots. Within days, the rumor mill is screaming. The band has quietly been at war over Take On Me money since the 90s, and Morten's diagnosis just ripped the lid off. Insiders leak that the song now earns between $3 and $5 million a year in syncs, streaming, and publishing. Money that still flows into a company the 3 of them own together. Except the splits were never renegotiated after the early days, and Paul, as primary writer, has allegedly wanted a bigger share for decades. Morten's medical bills are about to become astronomical, and suddenly, every future dollar is radioactive. Paul gives one radio interview where he sounds exhausted rather than angry. We were kids when we signed those papers. Nobody imagined one song would pay mortgages for 50,000 people. Now we're 60, and the song is still working harder than any of us. He stops short of demanding anything, but the message lands. Magna stays silent for weeks, then posts a single black and white photo on Instagram. The 3 of them on the Hunting High and Low cover, with the caption, "Some things are bigger than money." The comment section becomes a battlefield. Meanwhile, Morten cancels all solo shows and disappears to his farm on the West Coast. Paparazzi catch one grainy shot of him walking a dog along a fjord, looking thinner, hair silver now, but still carrying that quiet intensity. Fans leave flowers and handwritten notes at the gate. Someone starts a GoFundMe that raises $500,000 in a day before Morten asks them to stop and donate to Parkinson's research instead. The farewell tour rumors start immediately. Promoters wave blank checks. One last victory lap, stadiums, hundreds of millions on the table. The catch? Morten would have to sing the song that now physically hurts him every single night. He tells close friends he's torn between giving fans closure and protecting whatever voice he has left. In September 2025, the 3 of them finally meet face-to-face for the first time in years. No cameras, no managers, just three 60-something men in a cottage outside Bergen. They talk for 14 hours straight. Nobody knows exactly what was said, but when they come out, Paul is crying and Magnus' arm is around Morten's shoulders. They issue a joint statement the next day. No tour yet, no breakup, just time. Whatever fractures existed are still there, but something bigger is holding them together now. And the song? It keeps climbing streaming charts again, carried by a new generation who discovered it through TikTok transitions and their parents' vinyl. 40 years after it died twice, Take on Me is bigger than it has ever been, and more bittersweet than anyone could have predicted. Which brings us to the real reason it survived 3 deaths and keeps rising from the grave every time someone counts it out.
So here's the truth nobody tells you about overnight success. There's no such thing. What looks like lightning was actually 3 years of stubborn kids in a freezing Oslo basement refusing to let one melody die. It was 2 humiliating flops, a flooded animation studio, a flooded warehouse, a relationship that burned bright and burned out on camera, a decade of resentment, and now, in 2025, a frontman staring down Parkinson's while the song he can barely sing anymore pays for the medicine he needs. Take on Me didn't become immortal because it was perfect the first time. It became immortal because every single time the world tried to bury it, someone, Paul, Magne, Morten, Steve Barron, Bunty, a junior exec who stuck his neck out, even the animators with bleeding wrists, someone reached into the dirt and pulled it back out. That's the part the documentaries usually skip. They show you the pencil sketch triumph and the #1 plaques, but they don't show you the nights Morten cried in a London bathroom because his voice was gone, or Paul pawning his guitar to buy studio time, or Magne wondering if art school might have been the safer bet. They don't show you 3 60-year-old men hugging in a cottage in Bergen in 2025, trying to figure out how to say goodbye to a song that never said goodbye to them. The real reason Take on Me survived isn't the video, genius as it was. It's that every time life screamed, "Give up," 3 kids from Norway, and later 3 exhausted men from Norway, answered with the same 2 words they'd been singing since 1982. Take on Me. So the next time you're on your 3rd draft, your 3rd flop, your 3rd rejection, remember this song that died twice before most people ever heard it, and then refused to stay dead for 40 straight years. Some things, some people, some dreams are just too stubborn to stay in the grave. If this story hit you even half as hard as it hit me putting it together, do me a favor. Hit that like button so YouTube knows to show it to more people who need to hear it right now. Drop your own "I'm not giving up" moment in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're new here, subscribe and ring the bell, because next week we're diving into another track everyone wrote off that somehow clawed its way to legend. Keep going. The pencil lines are still being drawn. See you in the next one.